Hey guys, tonight we're taking a deep dive into something that's so familiar to us, yet so elusive. It's the one thing we all carry with us, whether we're aware of it or not. The one thing that makes us who we are, shapes the way we see the world, and guides us through the ebb and flow of life. We're talking about memory. Think about it for a second. Where are you right now? What's the first memory that pops into your mind? Maybe it's something from your childhood, a place you haven't been to in years, or a person who's long since faded from your life. Does it come with color, a feeling, a smell, or a sound? Is it vivid, or does it just barely hang on like a fading photograph that refuses to let go? That's the funny thing about memory. It's not always clear, it doesn't always stay in place, and yet it shapes everything about us. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from tonight. What's the time there where you are? I'm curious about how far and wide this little corner of wonder is reaching. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Memory is not a perfect snapshot of the past. It's not something we store neatly in boxes to pull out whenever we want to look back. No, memory is more like an old movie reel, always in motion, always shifting, always being rewritten with each new experience. You see, when we remember something, we don't just pull it from some deep vault in our minds and play it back exactly the way it was. Memory is a reconstruction, a little like piecing together a puzzle, but the pieces are not always the same size, and sometimes they don't quite fit. It's an active process, a dance between the past and the present. It's about what we choose to recall, how we filter those memories through the lens of who we are now. And the more we revisit them, the more they change, evolving just a little each time. Think about a memory that's important to you. Maybe it's something that makes you smile every time you think of it. Perhaps it's something you wish you could forget, but it sticks around like an unwelcome guest. Do you ever notice how those memories start to feel less like things that really happened and more like stories you've heard 1,000 times? That's because memory isn't just a passive recorder, it's a storyteller. It reshapes itself as we live, as we grow, and as we see the world differently with each passing day. It's almost as if the act of remembering is a way of becoming who we are. Who we were yesterday is not quite who we are today. The stories we tell ourselves about our past shape our present, the decisions we make, and how we define ourselves in the world. You know the phrase, "We are what we remember." There's a lot of truth to that, because without our memories, how would we know who we are? What would anchor us to our own existence? Without memory, we'd be lost, wandering in a fog without a map, unsure of where we've been, unsure of where we're going. But just like you can't live your life entirely on stories, memory doesn't live entirely in the past. It works in layers, constantly building on itself. It might start out as a single moment, a fleeting glance, a word, a smell, or a flash of sound, but then it gathers layers. It's not just about what you remember, but how those things make you feel. Memory pulls us in and, for a brief moment, takes us back. It wraps us in its embrace and says, "Do you remember this?" It's not about perfect accuracy, it's about what those moments meant to us when they happened, and what they mean to us now. But what happens when our memory starts to slip? Have you ever walked into a room and completely forgotten why you were there? Or reached for your phone, only to stand there, bewildered, wondering what exactly you're going to do with it? It's these little glitches in our memory that remind us of its fragility. It's not just the big things we forget, though let's be honest, sometimes those are the most frustrating. It's the tiny, everyday moments, the ones we never think to file away. The times we make dinner, only to forget the name of the spice we just reached for. The moments we blink and forget why we're standing in a specific spot. Memory is a curious creature. It's as if it's got its own agenda. Sometimes it holds on to what we'd rather forget, and other times it lets go of things that we wish it would hold tight to. Isn't it funny? How often we find ourselves forgetting where we placed our keys, but then, just when we stop trying so hard to remember, the memory pops up like a light bulb turning on. It's like memory has a mind of its own, only giving us access to what it thinks we need when it thinks we need it. That's the paradox of memory, isn't it? We rely on it to keep us grounded, to connect us to our past, to make sense of the world. But it doesn't always cooperate. It doesn't always play by our rules. We can try and hold on tight to the things we want to remember, but memory slips through our fingers like sand. And yet, somehow, even in its wild unpredictability, memory is one of the most beautiful parts of being human. The way it works, the way it builds us, the way it leaves traces of who we were, who we are, and, in a way, who we'll become. Each time we remember, we're not just recalling the past. We're shaping it into something new. We're telling a story that's uniquely ours. And even if that story changes over time, it's still part of us. You see, it's not about getting the facts right or remembering every detail in perfect clarity. It's about the meaning we attach to those memories, the feelings that come with them, the emotions that are stitched into each recollection. Whether they're real or not, they matter. And that's the part of memory that's truly magical. It's not about holding on to the past. It's about how the past shapes us, how it makes us who we are. Memory, at its core, is a constant companion. It's not always visible, but it's there quietly working in the background, guiding us, teaching us, reminding us of who we've been and who we might still become. Memory is the silent keeper of our stories. And tonight, we'll dive deep into that mysterious, beautiful process of remembering, to understand how it works, why it fails, and how we can learn to live with its imperfections. There's something so quietly fascinating about the way our brains work. In a split second, it seems we can remember the way someone's voice sounded or the precise way the sunlight filtered through the trees on a quiet afternoon. And yet, how does all that happen? How does the brain take the raw data, the sights, the sounds, the emotions, and turn it into something that feels so real, so vivid, that we can almost touch it again? Memory isn't just some passive process where we file away experiences and then retrieve them on command. No, memory is active, like a craftsman shaping the raw materials of our experiences into something meaningful, something we can hold on to. When you experience something, your senses take in the information, sight, smell, sound, taste, touch, and your brain begins its intricate work, converting all that sensory input into memory. But here's the trick. It's not just a simple storage system. No, your brain is constantly filtering, selecting, and deciding what's worth holding on to and what could be discarded. Think about a time you were in a crowded room, maybe at a party, maybe a family gathering. It was loud, chaotic. There were conversations happening all around you, maybe even music playing. Your senses were flooded with information. But if I asked you about that night now, what would you remember? Would it be the face of a friend you hadn't seen in years? The taste of the food? The way the light shifted as the evening stretched on? You wouldn't remember every detail, not every face, not every word, but there would be something that stood out. The brain doesn't capture everything. It only selects what it deems important, what it thinks you need to remember. What sticks is what your brain thinks is worth your time. Now, this process is all happening in the background. You don't see it happening, but your brain is busy weaving connections. There's a region of your brain called the hippocampus, this little seahorse-shaped part buried deep in the brain, that plays a central role in memory formation. You can think of it like the air traffic controller of memory. It helps organize new experiences and make sure they get to the right place in the brain to be stored. Without the hippocampus, you'd still have memories, but they'd be disconnected, fragmented, like a jumbled mess of experiences with no clear timeline. Once your brain has processed an experience, it doesn't just tuck it away. It weaves the memory into a web of connections. The smell of a friend's perfume might get attached to a memory of laughing together at a cafe. The sound of rain might bring back the warmth of a summer evening spent reading on the porch. Your brain doesn't store memories like a filing cabinet. It creates a complex web, connecting new memories with old ones, linking them to sights, sounds, emotions, and even other memories. This is why the brain has the ability to make a simple sound or smell trigger a flood of memories. And it's why a familiar face can instantly take you back to a specific moment in time. But the journey doesn't stop there. Once a memory is formed, it can be accessed, retrieved, and even changed. Every time you recall something, your brain doesn't just pull out of storage. No, it reconstructs it. Every time you revisit a memory, it's like opening an old book and reading it with a slightly new perspective. That's why your memories don't always stay the same. Over time, they can shift, becoming more vivid in some places and blurry in others. Sometimes, they can even change completely, shaped by new information, emotions, or the influence of someone else's version of the story. You've probably experienced this before. Have you ever had a conversation with someone about an event, only to realize that you both remember it differently? You're both sure of your version of the story, but your details don't quite line up. Maybe they remember something completely different, or they recall things that never happened at all. It's not that either of you is lying. It's that the brain rewrites memories as they're recalled. Your brain constantly updates, edits, and shapes memories in real time, based on what you've learned since the event, what you've heard, and even what you've forgotten. Think about it. Have you ever told a story so many times that the version of it in your mind starts to feel more real than what actually happened? Sometimes we tell ourselves a story over and over, and in doing so, we embellish certain details. We might change a line of dialogue, add an extra laugh, or even change the setting. The more we retell a story, the more the lines between what happened and what we think happened begin to blur. It's not because we're trying to deceive ourselves, it's just the nature of memory. Memory is not a recording device. It's a living, breathing, evolving story that we tell ourselves. Here's another layer to this complex process: attention. Have you ever noticed that the more present you are in the moment, the more likely you are to remember it later? If you're distracted or multitasking, the details slip through your mind like water. It's like when you're in a conversation, but your mind is elsewhere, thinking about a to-do list or a worry, and later, when you try to recall the conversation, you can't remember the words, the emotions, or the details. But when you're really focused on a moment, when your attention is fully immersed in the experience, your brain marks that moment as something worth holding on to. The more you pay attention to something, the more likely it is to make its way into your long-term memory. What's even more fascinating is that the stronger the emotional impact of a memory, the more likely it is to stick around. We all know this. Think about a time in your life when you were truly happy, or perhaps when you were heartbroken. Those moments are etched into your mind in a way that feels almost permanent. That's because the emotional weight of the memory marks it as significant. When you experience something intensely emotional, your brain signals the hippocampus, saying, "This matters. Store this one in high resolution." Whether it's joy, fear, or sadness, emotions amplify the strength of the memory. They leave an imprint. It's all a delicate balancing act. Your senses, your attention, your emotions, and your brain's ability to weave them all together. The more intensely you experience something, the more deeply it's imprinted on your mind. And in that way, your brain is constantly working to create a story, a narrative of who you are, where you've been, and how you see the world. But it's not perfect. Far from it. Memory is like a canvas, constantly painted over with new strokes, new layers, and sometimes new colors. A moment that once stood out might lose its vibrancy, or perhaps it will become so rich with details that it feels like it happened only yesterday. And that's the magic and the mystery of memory. It's not something we store away neatly. It's alive, it's constantly changing, and it's always shaping the way we see the world. Memory isn't just about the event itself. It's about the context in which that event is experienced. It's like walking into a room that's filled with familiar smells or sounds. Instantly, you're transported to another time, another place. It's as if the environment itself holds the key to unlocking old memories, things you didn't even realize were stored away. The mind works in this strange, layered way where context isn't just a backdrop. It's an essential player in the process of remembering. Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly something about it takes you back? Maybe it's the creak of the floorboards or the faint scent of something cooking. Maybe it's the sound of rain tapping against the window or the exact shade of light filtering through the blinds. And just like that, you're no longer in that moment. You're somewhere else in a memory, perhaps years old. It's a curious thing. One minute you're here, and the next you've time traveled, all because something in your environment triggered a memory you didn't even know you had. This is what scientists call context-dependent memory. Essentially, our minds hold on to memories not just as isolated incidents, but as deeply intertwined with the context in which they were formed. Take a trip back to your childhood home for a moment. Maybe you haven't been there in years. You walk through the front door, and instantly, the familiar smells, the colors, even the creaky floors, everything seems to pull you back in time. The sound of the kitchen sink running, the hum of the refrigerator, the light through the windows. It's like your body, your mind, your senses all remember this place more intimately than you ever realized. Suddenly, it's as though you've returned to a version of yourself that was, for a long time, forgotten. But you've always known it was there. Your brain just needed the right key, the right context to open that door. Isn't it wild how a specific sound or smell can bring back memories that you weren't actively trying to recall? Like how the scent of fresh-cut grass can take you back to summers spent playing outside as a child. Or how a particular song can remind you of a first love, or even of a heartbreak. Memory is activated by sensory cues, sights, sounds, smells, tastes, feelings, and the context of those cues is what helps us access these memories. It's not just about remembering facts or events. It's about what those events meant to us at the time and how those meanings are tied to the experiences we had. Imagine hearing a song you haven't listened to in years. Suddenly, you're back in your car, windows down, driving with someone you haven't seen in forever. The music brings back the feeling of that time, and before you know it, you're not just remembering the song. You're remembering the emotions you felt when you first heard it, the conversations that came with it, and the way the air smelled on that particular day. The song didn't just trigger a memory, it brought you back to that exact moment, with all the feelings you once had attached to it. It's the same with smells. Ever walked into a room and immediately been hit with the scent of something? Maybe cookies baking or a certain perfume. And it's like you've suddenly traveled through time. This is the power of context. And it's not limited to just triggering positive memories. Sometimes, the right context can pull you back to a memory that's far more complex or even painful. A photograph might not just remind you of an event. It might remind you of a feeling you've long forgotten. Maybe it's the grief of losing someone close, or the joy of a moment shared with a loved one who is no longer around. Memory doesn't just come in clear snapshots. It's emotional, it's sensory, and it's deeply connected to the environment in which it was created. We often think of memory as something that's locked inside our minds, like a secret safe we can open when we need it. But memory is influenced by everything around us. It's shaped by the air we breathe, the sounds that surround us, and even the people we're with. Have you ever noticed that certain places seem to hold on to memories more than others? Maybe it's a specific restaurant you used to visit with friends, or a park where you spent hours as a child. Every time you return, it's like the place itself is holding you in a memory. Your brain doesn't just store the event, it stores the entire context, the atmosphere, the mood, the smells, the sounds, the weather. All of these elements work together to create the feeling of a memory, and often it's the context that makes the memory feel so alive. Context is more than just a background. It's the lens through which we view our past. When we recall an event, we're not just remembering what happened. We're recalling the way the world around us shaped that experience. That's why the same event can feel so different depending on when and how we recall it. A walk through a forest can feel peaceful in one memory and exhilarating in another, depending on whether you were with friends, by yourself, or on a particular type of day. Your memories are rich with details that tell you more than just what happened. They tell you how you were feeling, who you were with, what the world was like at that time. And all those little pieces, woven together, make the memory uniquely yours. Sometimes, all it takes to bring a memory flooding back is the right context. You might have forgotten all about a childhood friend until one day you smell a particular flower or hear a certain voice, and suddenly you're right back in that moment with them. Context does more than just trigger memories. It enhances them, deepens them. It adds layers that you didn't even know were there. Every experience is a blend of our senses and the world around us. And as we move through life, we're constantly building connections, storing memories not just as isolated events, but as experiences tied to the context of time, place, and emotion. In a way, it's like we're constantly carrying around a map of our lives, drawn in sensory cues and emotional layers. And whenever we encounter a trigger, it's like the map unfolds in front of us, revealing not just the event, but the full experience of it. Memory, you see, is not a solitary thing. It's always connected to the world around us, woven into the fabric of time, space, and the people who have shared it with us. So, what happens when that context is altered? When we return to a place that was once so familiar, only to find that it's changed beyond recognition. It's like the memory no longer fits the world it once belonged to. That's when the strangeness of memory truly hits you. How can a memory still exist when its context is gone? How do you hold on to something that no longer has a place to exist? This is the mystery of memory. It's not just about the past. It's about the present, too. Memory is always shifting, always changing, depending on the context we give it. Memory is so much more than facts and figures. It's alive, wrapped in emotions, tied to feelings that sometimes make us want to laugh, and other times make our hearts ache. What makes a memory stick with us, lingering long after the event has passed? Why do certain moments become permanent imprints in our minds, while others slip away like sand through our fingers? The answer lies in the emotional weight of those experiences. Have you ever had a memory that feels as though it's embedded deep in your chest? A memory that, when you recall it, brings a rush of emotions, joy, sadness, love, regret? That's the emotional power of memory at work. Your brain doesn't just remember the event itself. It remembers the feelings attached to it. Emotions act as a kind of highlighter, drawing attention to the moments that really matter. And when something deeply emotional happens, whether it's the first time you felt true love or the grief of a loss, your brain takes notice. The emotional centers of the brain, the amygdala, signal to the hippocampus, saying, hold on to this one. This matters. Think about the first time you experienced something intensely emotional. Maybe it was your first kiss, or the moment you lost someone close to you. Do you remember how it felt? Do you recall the way your body responded? The rush of adrenaline, or the tightness in your chest? It's like the brain takes a snapshot of that moment, etching it into your memory with vivid detail. The emotions tie the memory to a deeper part of you, not just the event itself, but the way it made you feel. And that's why, years later, you might still remember exactly where you were, what you were wearing, or how the air smelled when that moment happened. But here's something interesting. When we're experiencing strong emotions, especially fear or stress, our perception of time changes. Have you ever been in a tense situation where time felt like it slowed down, or conversely, sped up, and then when you look back, it feels like the moment lasted longer than it actually did? That's your brain at work, recording the moment in high definition. When you're stressed or scared, your brain is actively paying attention to every little detail. How you felt, what was happening around you, what people said. In these emotional moments, the brain is working overtime to capture everything. And later, when you recall the event, it feels as though it lasted much longer than it actually did. There's a reason for that. When we experience fear or stress, the brain releases chemicals that help us store memories with greater intensity. Our attention sharpens, and details that we might normally ignore become prominent. The brain is essentially telling you, this is important. This moment could be life or death, so remember it well. And that's why emotional memories, especially those tied to moments of fear or excitement, tend to stick with us more than ordinary memories. These memories are vivid, deeply embedded in our minds, like snapshots that refuse to fade no matter how many years pass. But not all emotional memories are tied to fear. Joy, too, has a strong hold on memory. When something wonderful happens, like a celebration with family or an unexpected act of kindness, you might find yourself holding on to that moment for years. The warmth, the laughter, the love, it's all stitched into the fabric of your memory, anchored by the positive emotions you felt at the time. Positive emotional memories can bring us comfort and joy long after the event has passed, reminding us of the goodness that exists in our lives, even when things seem dark. Think about the last time you experienced a moment of pure happiness. Maybe it was a time with family, a celebration, or even just a quiet afternoon spent with someone you love. The joy of that moment doesn't just stay in your memory. It stays in your body, in your muscles, in your heartbeat. It's a feeling that doesn't fade because it's not just a memory in your mind. It's an experience that's been woven into the very fabric of who you are. Every time you remember that moment, the joy you felt rushes back in, like a burst of light. But here's where memory and emotion get really interesting. Sometimes it's not the event itself that we remember, it's the way we felt about the event at the time. This is especially true when it comes to things like regret, guilt, or shame. These memories don't fade as easily. They're like emotional scars that stay with us, tucked away in the corners of our minds, occasionally resurfacing when we least expect them. It's the memory of a mistake, a missed opportunity, or a regret that lingers like a shadow, following us even when we try to forget it. These emotional memories have a strange way of sticking around, and it's often because we haven't fully processed them. We can push them aside, but they come back, reminding us of something we can't let go of. But here's the thing. Emotional memories don't always have to hold us hostage. Over time, as we process those emotions, our brain begins to rewrite the story. Maybe the regret we feel about a past mistake softens, or the sadness we associate with a lost love turns into something that feels less sharp, less painful. The emotional intensity of a memory can change as we grow, as we learn to see it from a new perspective. Just like we can change the way we view a memory, we can change the emotions attached to it. That's the power of emotional growth. But it's not just about memories of big, life-changing events. Emotional memories also exist in the quiet moments, the small ones, the ones that happen every day without us even realizing it. Have you ever had a memory of a simple interaction with a friend, a partner, or a stranger? And when you think back on it, it's the feeling you remember more than the actual words spoken. Maybe it's the way someone smiled at you when you needed it the most, or the way a particular song always reminds you of a specific moment with a loved one. These small emotional moments form the threads that weave together our personal stories, and they stick with us in a way that big events can't always replicate. What's amazing about these emotional memories is that they often remain intact, even when other aspects of the event fade away. You might forget the details of what you were wearing that day, or who was sitting next to you, but you'll never forget the warmth of the smile or the feeling of connection that you shared. That's the beauty of emotional resonance. It's not about remembering everything. It's about remembering the feelings that matter. And sometimes, those feelings are all we really need to hold on to. Memory isn't just about remembering facts. It's about remembering the feelings we carry with us through life. These emotional memories are the ones that shape who we are. They create the lens through which we view the world and our place in it. And that's why the emotional power of memory is so important. It's not just the event itself. It's the emotional significance we attach to it. That's what makes memory truly unforgettable. For something that feels so solid from the inside, memory is unbelievably fragile. You probably know that from experience. You remember something so clearly, so confidently, that you'd bet money on it. And then someone else looks at you like you've just invented a whole alternate universe. That's not how it happened. they say, and you can feel this tiny crack appear in your certainty. Up until now, we've been wandering through the emotional power of memory, how feelings burn certain moments into you like constellations. But there's another side to that story. For every memory that feels sharp and luminous, there are others that are soft, smudged, or quietly edited by time without your permission. And the wild part is, you rarely notice the edits happening. Your brain doesn't come with a little pop-up that says, by the way, this part is made up. Every time you remember something, your brain doesn't just pull a file out of a folder and replay it. It rebuilds it, piece by piece. It takes fragments of the original experience, mixes in whatever you've learned since then, stirs in how you feel today, and then serves you the final product as if it's the original. It's like opening a document, tweaking a sentence, and hitting save again, except you don't realize you just edited it. Think of a conversation you were absolutely sure you remembered word for word. Maybe it was an argument, a confession, a moment that really mattered. Years later, you replay that conversation in your mind. The tone, the phrases, the pauses, they all feel real. Then you talk to the other person and they say, wait, I never said that, or no, you're the one who raised your voice first. Suddenly, your secure little memory is wobbling on its foundation. It's not because you're careless. It's not because they are. It's because both of you have been quietly updating your internal version of that interaction every time you thought about it. Your brain loves a good story more than it loves strict accuracy. If a detail doesn't quite fit, it will happily smooth it out or fill in the gap with something that feels right, something that makes emotional sense. You don't remember every word someone said at your 10th birthday party, so your brain might borrow a line from another memory, from a movie, from someone else's story, and plug it in like a missing puzzle piece. You don't remember how many people were there, so your mind nudges the number up or down until it matches the way that day feels in hindsight. Have you ever seen an old photograph of yourself and thought, oh yeah, I remember that day perfectly, even though you're not sure you actually remember the moment? You just remember the photo? That's one of memory's favorite tricks. You've seen the image so many times that your brain slowly starts to stitch in sound, smell, emotion until it becomes a memory, even if your real recollection is barely there. The photograph becomes the anchor, and your mind builds the rest around it like scenery on a stage. It's the same with family stories. Maybe there's a scene your relatives love to retell at gatherings. You were little, you did something funny or embarrassing, and now it's a legendary story. At some point, you stop remembering the original moment, and you only remember the retellings, the laughter, the reactions, the way certain lines always land. The memory becomes a performance you know by heart. It feels real because the emotion around it is real. But the details? Those might be more folklore than fact. This isn't just a cute quirk of the mind. Memory's fragility has a darker edge too. You could swear something happened that never did. Entire memories can be built on suggestion alone. Someone tells you, remember when you got lost at the mall that time? At first you might say, no, I don't think that was me. But if they insist, if they offer enough detail, you were crying near the toy store, mom was frantic, your brain starts to play along. You imagine it, maybe once, then again and again. And eventually the line between imagining and remembering quietly dissolves. Your brain is not trying to lie to you. It's trying to make sense. It's trying to maintain a smooth, continuous narrative of your life. A story with gaps feels uncomfortable, so your mind pads it out with assumptions. It connects dots with lines that were never really there, and the result feels just as real as any other memory because the same emotional and sensory circuits light up when you recall it. There's something humbling about that, isn't there? The idea that you could be walking around with memories that never actually happened, at least not in the way you're so sure they did. And yet, those memories can still shape your behavior, your beliefs, your sense of self. You might be afraid of speaking in public because you remember a humiliating moment in school that, in reality, went very differently. You might hold a grudge over a sentence that was never said, at least not in the way your brain plays it back. Even supposedly unforgettable memories, those bright flashbulb moments like where you're during big news or the instant you got life-changing news, aren't immune. People are often incredibly confident about these memories. They'll tell you with absolute conviction where they were standing, what they were wearing, who was next to them. Yet when these stories are checked over time, the details shift. The shirt changes. The room changes. Sometimes even the person who gave them the news changes. The emotional core stays, but the edges blur and redraw themselves again and again. Memory is less like a painting stored in a vault and more like a sand sculpture on the beach. Every time you visit it, the wind has moved something, the tide has reshaped a corner, and you, without even realizing it, take your hands and smooth, fix, decorate. You walk away believing the sculpture is the same, but it isn't. It's new every time, just close enough to the original that you don't notice. This fragility becomes painfully clear when memory is challenged head-on. Imagine being absolutely certain that a friend promised you something, you said you'd be there, and they're just as certain they never made that promise. It's tempting to decide someone must be lying, but often what's really happening is much quieter and stranger. Two different brains, two different sets of emotional filters, two different internal editors, each reconstructing that shared moment in their own way. Your memory is not just what happened. It's what mattered to you at the time. It's what you paid attention to. It's what you were afraid of, what you hoped for, what you assumed. All of that influences what gets written down and what gets quietly erased. Two people in the same room are living slightly different stories. Later, they remember slightly different worlds. Even the memories you wish you could delete are made of this fragile stuff. A painful comment someone made years ago might circle in your head, sharper each time. Not because the words were actually that precise, but because your memory has honed them. Each recall tightens the sting, clarifies the phrasing, emphasizes the parts that hurt the most. Like sharpening a knife on a whetstone, you can accidentally sharpen a wound every time you revisit it. But there's a hidden mercy inside this fragility. Because if memories can worsen when we revisit them through a harsh lens, they can also soften when we revisit them with understanding. Change the meaning you attach to a moment, and over time, the memory itself shifts. That humiliating scene from school might become less about, I was ridiculous, and more about, I was young and learning. That breakup might move from, I was abandoned, to I survived something hard and grew from it. The facts don't necessarily change, but the emotional weight does, and with it, the way the memory feels in your body. It's almost like your memories are clay waiting in your hands. Not totally formless. You can't turn a birthday party into a trip to Mars, but flexible enough that how you shape them matters. How you talk to yourself about your past, how you frame it, how you choose to see it, all of that feeds back into the next time your brain reconstructs that scene. So yes, memory is fragile. It forgets, it distorts, it fills in, it embellishes. It insists on being more of a story than a spreadsheet. But that fragility is also what lets you heal, what lets you grow, what allows your past to slowly reorganize itself around your present self instead of trapping you in amber. You don't have a perfect archive of your life. You have something stranger and more human. A living, shifting mosaic, constantly rearranging itself to keep you coherent, to keep you moving, to let you wake up each day and still say, this is me, even if the details keep softly changing in the background. There's something magical about the brain, don't you think? It's not just an organ that processes thoughts, emotions, and experiences. It's a living, breathing entity that's constantly evolving. The term neuroplasticity captures that magic. It's the brain's remarkable ability to change, adapt, and rewire itself in response to experience. This isn't just a theoretical concept. It's happening inside your head, right now, every time you learn something new or even just remember something differently. Imagine this. Every time you learn a new skill, whether it's as complex as playing an instrument or as simple as tying your shoes, your brain is physically changing. Neurons, those tiny invisible messengers, are creating new connections, building new pathways. The more you practice, the stronger those pathways become. It's like carving a trail through the forest. The more you walk it, the clearer and easier it becomes to follow. That's neuroplasticity in action. Your brain is literally rewiring itself based on the experiences you have. This is why you can learn new things, even as you get older. It's why people with brain injuries can sometimes regain abilities they've lost, or why you can still remember how to ride a bike after years of not doing it. Even if you forget the specific moment you learned how to balance, your body remembers the movements. That's procedural memory at work, but it's built on the same neuroplastic principles. The pathways that allowed you to learn to ride a bike have been engraved so deeply into your brain that, even without conscious thought, your body remembers. The brain's ability to change itself means that memory isn't as fixed as we often think. We used to believe that after a certain age, the brain's structure and function were essentially locked in place. But now we know that's not true. Your brain is constantly evolving, constantly learning and adapting, no matter how old you are. Each time you recall a memory, it doesn't just pull up a static, unchanging file. It reactivates a network of neurons that strengthens or weakens depending on how often that memory is revisited, how much emotion is attached to it, or how deeply it's ingrained. Think of it this way. When you learn something new, you're not just adding it to a file. Your brain is physically making changes to its structure, growing new connections between neurons, enhancing communication between different regions. It's like building a bridge between two distant islands. And the more you walk across that bridge, the stronger it becomes, until one day, you don't even think about crossing it anymore. It's just there, part of the landscape. But while neuroplasticity is incredible, it's not just about adding new skills or memories. It's about the constant reshaping of the brain. The same mechanism that allows you to learn new things also lets you forget old ones. And sometimes, that forgetting is as important as remembering. The brain is constantly deciding which memories are worth holding on to and which ones it can safely discard. Repetition strengthens neural connections, while lack of use leads to weakening and eventually the fading of memories. This process can be both a blessing and a curse. You forget things you don't need to remember, but you also forget things that could be important. It's like your brain is doing a little spring cleaning, clearing out the clutter, but sometimes it throws away things you might want to keep. But here's where it gets really interesting. The act of remembering itself can change the memory. Every time you recall a memory, the brain doesn't just dust it off and put it back. Instead, it updates it, reshapes it, and reinforces it in a slightly different way. If you've ever noticed how your memories become sharper, more vivid, or even slightly altered as time passes, that's neuroplasticity at work. The brain is constantly reworking and refining its own history, making connections to current experiences, emotions, and information. This is why memories sometimes feel like they're a bit off when you revisit them. Maybe a particular detail stands out more than it did the first time, or a feeling that you didn't remember at first now comes flooding back. Your memory isn't a fixed image. It's a dynamic, evolving process. And each time you remember, your brain subtly rewrites it, adding layers and colors, making it a bit different than it was before. The plasticity of memory means that it's not just about the brain passively recording everything that happens. Instead, memory is about your brain actively reshaping your experiences, revising them to fit the present moment, to help you make sense of the world today. Your memories, then, aren't just a list of past events. They're a reflection of who you are now, based on what you've learned and experienced since the event first occurred. So, you can imagine how this reshaping can be both helpful and problematic. In therapy, for example, people often reframe memories, changing the meaning attached to them in order to heal. If a traumatic memory is revisited with new understanding or compassion, it can change the way the brain stores that memory. The emotional charge might lessen, the sharp edges might soften, and over time, the memory might stop carrying the same weight. This is a powerful aspect of neuroplasticity. It can help us heal, grow, and evolve. But also means that our memories aren't reliable little time capsules. They're more like living things, growing and changing as we do. The fact that memory is plastic, malleable, means that what you remember today may not be exactly what happened. It may be a memory shaped by your current emotions, your present understanding, or even the way someone else has helped you recall the past. In that sense, memory is less like a photograph and more like a painting, constantly in progress, open to interpretation, and always evolving. Neuroplasticity offers hope, especially when it comes to recovery and learning. The brain is always capable of growth, even when it feels like things are too broken to fix. Whether you're recovering from a traumatic event, a brain injury, or simply the effects of aging, the brain's ability to reorganize itself means that memory can be restored, improved, and even reinterpreted. This also explains why practicing skills, like learning a new language or playing an instrument, can lead to real, lasting changes in your brain. You're not just adding new information, you're physically reshaping your brain structure, creating new neural pathways that last. And yet, this adaptability comes with a certain fragility. Every time the brain updates a memory, it opens that memory up to being altered, sometimes in unexpected ways. Every time you revisit the past, there's a chance that something will shift. What's fascinating is that this fragility isn't just a flaw. It's part of what makes memory so flexible, so useful. It allows the brain to adapt to new circumstances, to reframe old memories with fresh perspectives. It means that memory isn't static, and neither are you. In the end, memory's malleability, its ability to be remade and reshaped, lets us carry our past forward with us. Our memories might not be perfect, but that imperfection is what makes them ours. It's what makes them flexible, adaptable, and always relevant to the present. The brain's ability to rewire itself gives us the freedom to reinterpret, to learn, to grow. It means that memory isn't just a record of what was. It's a tool for what can be. Imagine, for a moment, how overwhelming life would be if every detail was etched into your mind permanently. Every passing glance, every brief conversation, every single fleeting emotion would stick with you, never fading, never being let go. It might seem like a blessing at first, never forgetting a word, never misplacing a memory. But in reality, it would be exhausting, suffocating even. The mind would be weighed down by the constant stream of recollections, with no space left to breathe, to move forward. This is why forgetting, surprisingly, is just as important as remembering. Now, you might think that forgetting is a failure, a flaw in our mental process. After all, we're taught from a young age that remembering is the key to success, to wisdom, to learning. And yes, memory is crucial. It shapes who we are, how we interact with the world, and how we see ourselves. But there's another side to memory that's just as important, if not more so: the ability to forget. The brain, as remarkable as it is, has its limits. It can only process so much information at once, and without forgetting, there would be no room for new experiences, new memories, or new learning. Forgetting is a form of mental housekeeping, sifting through the clutter of everyday life, deciding which memories are worth keeping and which can be discarded to make space for what matters now. Think about a time you've experienced something difficult. Maybe it was the end of a relationship, the loss of a loved one, or a failure that still stings when you think about it. Those memories don't just vanish, but over time, they change. They become less sharp, less raw, as the emotions that once made them feel so immediate and painful gradually soften. That's your brain, in a way, doing you a favor. It's clearing out the emotional clutter, allowing you to heal and move forward. Forgetting is essential for emotional survival. Without it, we would be trapped in a never-ending loop of pain, replaying the same hurt over and over. We would hold on to old grievances, failures, and wounds as if they were a part of us, suffocating under their weight. But forgetting doesn't mean erasing. It means recalibrating. It means shifting focus, finding new meaning, and allowing the present to have its own space without the constant interference of the past. This is why some of the most painful experiences in life lose their hold over time. You might never completely forget the grief of losing someone you love, but over the years, the sharpness of that grief fades. You may still remember the details, the last words spoken, the last time you saw them, but the pain no longer dominates your life. It becomes part of you, but it no longer defines you. The memory is there, but the emotional weight has lessened. This is the gift of forgetting. It doesn't erase the past. It allows you to live with it. But forgetting doesn't always happen on its own. Sometimes, we need to help the process along. We need to actively let go of things that no longer serve us. Maybe it's the anger you've held onto for years, or the bitterness of an unresolved argument. These feelings are natural, but if they're kept too long, they begin to take root, poisoning the present. Letting go is hard, but forgetting, choosing not to let certain memories control you, is a form of healing. It's a conscious decision to move forward, to clear mental space for new experiences. We also forget because our brains simply cannot hold everything. Every day, we are bombarded with a constant stream of information. Conversations, sounds, sights, smells. Most of this information is irrelevant to our day-to-day lives. So, our brain naturally filters it out. In fact, some studies suggest that we forget up to 90% of what we experience. The rest, what we remember, is what our brain deems important, whether because it's emotionally charged, relevant, or necessary for our survival. That's why we often forget things that aren't tied to any deep emotional significance or current need. The brain's focus is on what's useful, not on what's trivial. Think about how often we forget names or faces of people we've met briefly. It's not that we didn't pay attention when we met them, but our brains simply decided that remembering those details wasn't essential. Our brains are constantly prioritizing what's useful. So when something doesn't seem important for the moment, it's pushed aside, filed under unnecessary, and forgotten. And yet, forgetting can be a challenge. Some memories are stubborn. They refuse to be swept away, no matter how much we want them to fade. Perhaps it's a deeply painful experience or a moment of failure that keeps resurfacing. These memories cling to us, anchored in emotions, and try as we might, they don't seem to go away. This is where forgetting gets tricky. Sometimes, the more we try to forget, the more it sticks to us. It's like holding on to a handful of sand. The tighter we grip, the faster it slips through our fingers. That's the paradox of forgetting. We can't control it. It happens on its own, whether we want it to or not. It's the brain's way of making space, but not every memory can be neatly filed away. Sometimes it resurfaces. Sometimes the emotions tied to it resurface. And that's when we have to let go, not by forcing it, but by accepting it, allowing it to fade naturally over time. Here's something beautiful about the process of forgetting. It's a part of growth. The more we let go of the past, the more room we have for the present. And without the space to live in the moment, we would be trapped in a constant cycle of the past. Forgetting doesn't mean abandoning the past. It means letting the past exist in its place while you continue forward. It's about giving yourself the freedom to move on, to experience new things without being anchored to the weight of every past emotion. In the end, forgetting is essential for healing, for growth, and for survival. Without it, we'd be trapped in a web of memories, constantly reliving the past. But with the gift of forgetting, we can let go of the things that no longer serve us and make room for the beauty of the present. The key is not to erase, but to release. Let the memories fade, but keep the lessons they've taught you. Let go of the pain, but hold on to the strength it gave you. And as you continue on your journey, remember this: forgetting isn't the enemy. It's a natural part of the cycle, one that allows you to heal, to grow, and to move forward. Forgetting reminds you that your mind can let go. But the things it decides to keep, those don't all live in the same place or even feel like the same kind of thing. Memory wears many faces, and some of them are so ordinary that you don't even recognize them as memory at all. You might think of memory as that thing you use when you're trying to recall your Wi-Fi password or what you had for dinner last Tuesday. That's one kind of memory, sure. But what about the way your fingers glide over a keyboard without you thinking where each letter is? Or how you can ride a bike after 10 years, wobbly for a second, then suddenly your body just remembers? That's memory too, just a quieter version. Think about this. Right now, you can probably tell me the name of your first school, the capital of your country, and the name of someone you loved or still love. Those are memories you can put into words. You can tell the story, point to the facts. This is often called declarative memory because you can declare out loud. It's the part of memory that deals with what I know and what happened to me. Even inside that, there are different flavors. Sometimes you remember a specific event, like a birthday, a holiday, or a disaster. Those are the episodes of your life, little scenes that carry smells, sounds, and feelings. Other times, you remember knowledge with no clear origin story, like Paris is the capital of France, or water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. You probably don't remember the exact moment you learned those facts. They just sit there, like furniture in a room you've always lived in. Both of these, your life's episodes and your mental library of facts, belong to that same broad family of I can tell you this memory. But there's a whole other world of memory that exists below the surface, where words don't reach as easily. When you pick up a pen and your hand just knows how to form letters, that's memory. When you instinctively hit the brake in a car because a shadow moved too quickly in front of you, that's memory too. When you hear the first two notes of a familiar song and your body already knows where the chorus lands, that's not you thinking through the sheet music. That's your brain running patterns that is stored so, well, they've become part of your reflexes. This quieter layer is sometimes called non-declarative memory. You don't have to consciously call it up. You don't sit there thinking, okay, step 1, put foot on pedal, step 2, balance, step 3, don't die. You just get on the bike and your body steps in like an old friend saying, relax, I've got this. It's almost funny how different these kinds of memory feel. You can forget the face of someone you went to school with, but your hands still remember exactly how to tie your shoelaces. You might forget a coworker's name 5 minutes after they introduce themselves, but somehow your fingers remember a password you haven't typed in months. On paper, that seems backwards. Names and faces feel important, but your brain doesn't sort importance the same way you do. It sorts by repetition, by pattern, by usefulness in movement and survival. The brain even has different neighborhoods for these different types of memory. Those vivid life scenes, the first day at a job, the moment you realized you were in love, depend heavily on that hippocampus we talked about earlier, along with nearby areas that specialize in mapping time and space. Your library of facts lives in networks spread across the cortex, the outer layers of the brain where knowledge and language often meet. But those deep habits, those skills your body performs like second nature, lean on other areas, the basal ganglia, the cerebellum, regions built for movement, rhythm, and repetition. There's something strangely comforting about knowing that your memories aren't all stored in one fragile vault. They're scattered, distributed, woven into many systems. That's why someone can lose their ability to form new life episodes, like the famous patient who couldn't remember what happened 5 minutes ago, and yet still learn to trace a shape in a mirror or get better at a puzzle. His conscious memory, his ability to say, I remember doing this yesterday, was shattered. But his hands improved every day, practicing a skill his mind could no longer track. One part of him forgot. Another part quietly learned anyway. You live like that too, just in a less dramatic way. There are skills you can do without narrating them. Your brain has logged thousands of repetitions and decided, we don't need to bother the storytelling part of the mind with this anymore. It hands the job off to the downstairs crew, efficient, silent, not asking for applause. There are more subtle faces of memory, too. Think about the way you can be nudged in a certain direction without realizing it. You see a word flashed on a screen very quickly, too quickly to fully process it, and later you're more likely to use that word or something related to it. That's your brain being gently primed. It's memory, but not in the "I recall" that sense. It's a shift in probability, a tilt in what comes to mind next. Then there's conditioning, the way your body learns to respond automatically to certain cues. A dog hears a bell and starts to salivate because it's learned to expect food. You hear your email notification sound and your stomach drops a little because you've unconsciously learned to associate that chime with stress or work. That's memory too. Your nervous system learning patterns, predicting what comes next, preparing you before you even have time to think a sentence. And hovering in the background of all this is short-term memory, that fragile little mental desk where you temporarily place things. A phone number you repeat to yourself just long enough to type it in. The beginning of this sentence while you're processing the end. It's like a scratch pad your mind uses to hold information briefly before deciding. Save this, toss this, or turn it into something else. Without that temporary holding space, the flow of thought would constantly fall apart. From there, certain things get moved into longer-term storage. But there isn't a single warehouse where all your memories go. Some become stories, neatly linked to time and place. Others become quiet reflexes. Others still become biases, tendencies, gut feelings that you can't quite explain, but that guide what you reach for, who you trust, what you expect from the world. Think about how this plays out in daily life. You walk into a cafe. Without consciously deciding, you know where the counter probably is, where people will line up, which table looks like a good spot. Part of you is using episodic memory, remembering other cafes you've been in. Part is using semantic memory, your general knowledge about how cafes work. Part is using procedural memory. Your body knows how to walk, how to carry a cup without spilling, how to sit in a chair. And somewhere below all that, there are associations. Maybe the smell of coffee makes you feel safe because it reminds you of slow mornings with someone you loved, or maybe it makes you slightly anxious because it smells like deadlines and exams. So many types of memory, stacked on top of each other, all humming at once just to get you through an ordinary 5 minutes. And sometimes they don't agree. You can know, intellectually, that you're safe in a certain situation, while your body's old conditioning tells you otherwise. You can have a semantic memory that says, dogs are usually friendly, and an emotional memory that says, last time, a dog snarled at me, and a procedural memory that makes your muscles tense when one runs toward you. These layers don't always sync up neatly. That's part of why you can feel conflicted without knowing why. Different faces of memory are speaking at the same time, not always in harmony. The more you notice this, the more you start to see memory not as a single thing, but as an orchestra. There's the loud soloist, the part of you that can say, when I was 10, this happened. There's the percussion section keeping rhythm quietly in your movements. There are the low, steady notes of habit and conditioning, the quick little flutes of short-term recall, the deep strings of long-term knowledge humming underneath. Sometimes one section leads. Sometimes another crashes in unexpectedly. And you sitting there inside all of it, just feel the music and call it me. It's kind of amazing, isn't it? You're not just a person with one big memory bank. You're a collection of different systems, each one remembering in its own way, each one shaping how you move, think, react, and feel. You are a patchwork of stories, skills, instincts, and half-remembered impressions. Together, they create the sense that you are continuous, that you are the same person today that you were years ago, even though, if you look closely, so much has changed. And all of these faces of memory, with their own quirks and strengths, feed into something even larger and more mysterious, your sense of who you are. All those different kinds of memory, stories, skills, reflexes, gut feelings come together to build something much bigger, your sense of self. The you that you point to when you say, this is who I am. It feels solid, doesn't it? As if there's one continuous person stretching from your earliest childhood memory all the way to this moment, listening here with me. But when you look closely, that feeling of continuity is woven almost entirely out of memory. Think back to your earliest clear memory. Maybe you're in a classroom, or running in a yard, or staring at a toy on the floor. You remember the size of the room, the angle of light, maybe the feeling of being small in a big world. Whoever you were in that moment, you only know them through memory. If those early images vanished completely, it would be like a whole part of you never existed, at least from your perspective. You know who you are because you remember who you've been. Not every moment, of course, you're not a complete archive, but a chain of key scenes like frames from a film. There's the kid version of you, the teenage version, the first time versions. Maybe there's a version of you that was braver than you feel now, or more anxious, or more hopeful. When you think of yourself, you don't just think of your face or your name. You think of those versions layered on top of each other. Memory is the thread that stitches them into a single story. And that's really what your identity is, a story you tell yourself about yourself. Not out loud most of the time, but silently, constantly. I'm the kind of person who, I never. Those little sentences you repeat become like headlines, and the memories you choose to highlight underneath them are the supporting evidence. If you see yourself as responsible, your mind will gladly pull up all the times you showed up early, helped out, did the right thing, even if there were times you didn't. If you secretly believe you're a failure, your brain will be equally happy to spotlight every mistake, every disappointment, every time you stumbled. Same brain, same life, different story, different you. That's the strange power of memory. It doesn't just record your life, it edits your identity. You don't remember everything you've done, so your mind becomes selective. It keeps the scenes that fit the story you're unconsciously trying to tell. That's why two people can live through similar events, but come away with completely different self-images. One person looks back on challenges and thinks, I survived that. I must be strong. Another looks at similar struggles and thinks, I barely got through that. I must be weak. The past didn't change, but the story built from his memories did. And here's the twist. Your current identity also shapes what you remember going forward. If you think of yourself as shy, you'll more easily recall social moments that felt awkward and forget the times you handled things just fine. If you see yourself as unlovable, your memory will collect evidence that supports that and quietly push aside moments when people genuinely cared for you. It's biased, not because you're broken, but because your brain likes consistency. It tries to make your memories line up with your self-image, even if that image hurts you. This is part of why changing your life can feel so hard. You're not just fighting habits in the present. You're arguing with an entire back catalog of memories you've been using to define yourself. When you try to believe, I can do this, some old part of you pulls up a highlight reel of times you couldn't. When you think, I deserve better, memory might shove an old heartbreak or rejection in your face, as if to say, see, this is who you really are. But that highlight reel is curated. It's not the whole story. There were also quiet victories, small kindnesses, moments of strength you forget as soon as they pass because they didn't fit the script at the time. If you started telling a different story about yourself, those forgotten moments might start coming back into focus. You can see this most clearly when memory is damaged. Think of someone with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. As they begin to lose memories, names, years, faces, something about their identity shifts. The person you love is still there, but the story they hold about themselves starts to unravel. They might forget their job, their role in the family, the history that once anchored them, and you can feel how disorienting that is. Without those memories, the sense of I am this person becomes blurry. Yet even then, tiny fragments remain. A favorite song still makes their face light up. A familiar prayer, a lullaby, a childhood rhyme might surface from somewhere deeper than words. Sometimes they'll react instinctively to a loved one's touch or smile at a joke in the same old way. Pieces of identity shine through even as the conscious storyline fades. That suggests something important. Even though memory is a huge part of identity, it's not the whole thing. There's also personality, temperament, maybe something like character, the way someone tends to respond when everything else is stripped away. But for you, sitting here with an intact mind, memory is the main scaffolding your sense of self stands on. It's also what lets you feel like you're the same person across time, even though physically you're not. Your body has changed. Your beliefs have changed. Your goals have changed. There are probably things your past self will be shocked to learn you now think or do. And yet there's this quiet continuity woven through all of it. You remember being that earlier you. You can look back and say, that was me, even if you cringe a little. In that way, memory is like a bridge between all your different versions. It lets you update the past as you change. A belief you once clung to now feels naive. A mistake you once saw as unforgivable now looks like a step on the path. The memory itself might be the same. You said those words, you made that choice, but the meaning you attach to it shifts. That's identity evolving through memory. This also means you're not stuck with the story you've inherited from your past. Yes, the facts are there, but the interpretation is flexible. You can look at the same memory and decide to pull a different lesson from it. Instead of, I failed, you might see I tried. Instead of, they left because I wasn't enough, maybe they left because we weren't right for each other. The past doesn't rewrite itself, but the part of you that wears it, the identity that grows out of it, absolutely can. Sometimes this happens in big, dramatic ways. A near-death experience, a breakup, a breakdown, or a breakthrough can lead you to say, I'm not that person anymore. And suddenly, when you look back, your memories line up differently. Certain scenes that used to feel small now look like turning points. Others that once seemed huge shrink in importance. You edit your own origin story in real time. Other times, the shift is slower and gentler. You start going to therapy, or journaling, or just having deeper conversations. You start catching yourself in those old, I always and I never phrases and realize they're not as true as they feel. And as your picture of yourself softens, the memories that seemed carved in stone begin to soften too. They become part of you, but not the whole of you. There's something powerful and tender in noticing this. You can look at your memories not as a judge's verdict, but as raw material. They're the drafts, the footage, the scenes. Identity is the story you've edited together from them. And like any story, it can be revised. Of course, you can't just snap your fingers and suddenly believe you're someone completely different. That would feel fake and your brain would reject it. But you can start by paying attention to which memories you always replay, which ones you conveniently skip, which ones you twist against yourself. Little by little, you can invite in the scenes that show you being kinder, braver, more capable than your inner critic admits. In doing that, you're not lying to yourself. You're remembering more honestly. You're letting more of your past come into the light instead of letting one painful thread define the whole tapestry. And the more you do that, the more your future starts to shift too. Because your sense of what's possible for you, what kind of choices you can make, what kind of life you're allowed to build, is rooted in the story of who you think you are. Change the story, and slowly, the future opens a little wider. You are not just your memories, but without them, the word you wouldn't mean much at all. Memory hands you the role, the history, the continuity. Identity is how you choose to play it. And somewhere in that ongoing conversation between who you were, who you are, and who you might become, memory keeps whispering its lines, one scene at a time. Flashbulb memories. They're the ones that stand out with startling clarity, the memories that feel like they're branded onto your mind, as if the event itself was captured in high definition, while everything else around it becomes hazy, like a dream fading at dawn. These are the moments in your life that you're absolutely sure you'll never forget. The ones where the details feel as vivid as if they just happened yesterday, even if they occurred years ago. We all have them, don't we? The moment you heard about a world-changing event, the terrorist attacks of 9/11, the announcement of a major political shift, the loss of someone important to you. It's almost as if your brain was hyper-aware in those instances, making sure that everything about the event was locked into place. The memory isn't just a faint recollection. It's a snapshot burned into your mind. It's fascinating, isn't it? Why do some memories feel so different from others, so much more substantial? Why do we have these vivid, emotional recollections of certain events that seem to stand apart from the more ordinary moments of our lives? A simple part of it is the emotional impact of those events. The emotional centers of the brain, the amygdala, are at work, and they signal to the hippocampus, pushing those events to the forefront, making sure they don't slip away like so many other things. Your brain doesn't just want you to remember a detail, it wants you to feel it. Think back to a flashbulb memory from your life. Maybe it's a significant loss, a celebration, or a pivotal personal achievement. Do you remember what you were wearing? Do you recall where you were standing? The sounds, the colors, the people around you? It's almost as if your mind zoomed in on the moment in full detail, imprinting it into your memory. But here's the twist. While flashbulb memories feel so vivid and permanent, they're not always as accurate as we think. In fact, they can be just as prone to distortion as any other memory. In studies where people were asked to recall the details of flashbulb moments, they often came up with different versions of the same event, with gaps, inconsistencies, or changes in the specifics. The emotional charge around those moments often blurs the fine details, making the memory feel more true than it might actually be. You've probably experienced this. Maybe a friend or a family member recalls a shared event, and when you hear their version, it's different from yours. The big moments, the ones that are supposed to be the clearest in your mind, can shift over time. The feeling stays strong, but the facts, who said what, the exact sequence of events, start to change, especially as your memories get reshaped by emotions and new perspectives. Take, for example, your memory of a major life event, something you experienced firsthand, like a breakup, a wedding, or the birth of your child. When you remember it, you're not just recalling the sequence of events. You're remembering how you felt, what you thought about those events, what your expectations were, and how everything in your life up to that point played into the experience. Your brain fuses all of that, emotion, expectation, meaning, into a memory that feels completely real, but that's also just a little bit of a reconstruction, a little bit of a remix. Memory doesn't just pull from the event itself. It pulls from everything that surrounds the event, including what you've learned since then, how your emotional state has evolved, and even how others have recounted the event. This is part of the reason why flashbulb memories can be so slippery. As time goes on, the details aren't just overwritten by time. They're subtly altered by the ongoing process of remembering itself. The more you tell a story, the more you reshape it. Here's another mind-boggling thing. Sometimes the more intense and emotional the memory, the more likely it is to be distorted. You'd think that strong emotions would anchor a memory in place, but in fact, they can sometimes make things less clear. In some ways, it's as though the mind becomes so focused on the intensity of the moment, the drama, the stakes, that it forgets to pay attention to the details. The memory becomes about the feeling of the moment, the impact, the significance, rather than the exact sequence of events. The brain prioritizes the emotional essence of the moment, which can cause certain facts to slip away unnoticed. Let's pause here and think about something personal, your own flashbulb memories. The moments that, when you look back, feel as though they've been etched into the core of your identity. It's as if they define parts of who you are, the key points of your life story. But what if the next time you revisit them, some small detail turns out to be off? The colors in the background might be different, the people might be standing in different places, or the words exchanged might not be quite as you remembered. It's unsettling, right? But it's part of how the mind works. Our memories aren't these perfect photographs stored away in a vault. They're living, breathing entities that are shaped, reshaped, and even reimagined. And that's okay. In fact, it might be more than okay. It might be the way memory is meant to function. Memory isn't a sterile archive. It's a dynamic, fluid process. It's not about retaining facts in their pristine form. It's about retaining meaning, and that meaning is shaped by time, emotion, and experience. Memories are less like photos in an album and more like paintings on canvas, which change their form and texture depending on the artist's mood or the light in the room. It's worth remembering that our memories aren't as much about preservation as they are about connection. What they preserve is the meaning we attach to them. And because meaning evolves, so do the memories that carry it. Sometimes, that evolution helps us grow. The memory of a mistake, for example, might transform over time into a lesson that empowers us. A memory of loss might eventually open up space for acceptance, for peace. So while you might never forget the way you felt when the news hit or when your heart broke, what you might forget is the exact layout of the room or the exact sequence of words spoken. The essence of the memory, the emotional core, the lesson it taught you, remains even if some of the details fade or shift. The paradox of flashbulb memories is that, while they feel like the clearest, most reliable memories we have, they're also among the most susceptible to distortion. In a way, that makes them more human. These vivid recollections are filled with the beauty and imperfection of lived experience. They're full of meaning, full of emotion, and that's the very thing that makes them stick with us. In the end, flashbulb memories aren't meant to be perfect. They're meant to be felt, and maybe that's why they stay with us. Because in all their imperfection, they're a reminder that no matter what the facts may be, the feelings are always real. Isn't it strange how time and memory seem to be constantly at odds? One is linear, the other circular. Time moves forward, taking us with it, while memory loops back, spinning us around in the past. Time seems like a relentless river, pushing us toward the future. Memory, on the other hand, is like an old photograph album, flipping between moments that refuse to stay in their allotted spaces. This dissonance between time and memory is most apparent as we grow older. When we're young, every new experience is vivid. Every moment feels like it lasts forever, and memories pile up at an incredible rate. But as we age, time seems to speed up. The days blur together. Life becomes a repetition of routines, familiar sights, and well-worn paths. The newness of the world fades, and with it, the richness of memory. Think back to a time when you were a child. Remember the feeling of summer stretching endlessly before you. Each day felt like a tiny eternity, didn't it? You could wake up in the morning and feel as though the possibilities were endless, as if the day ahead would hold something exciting, something new. But now, as an adult, time feels like it's constantly running away from you. Days blend into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. Time has this way of gathering speed the older we get, and it feels like there's less room for newness, less space for the experiences that once colored our lives so vibrantly. There's a reason for that. Your brain is constantly absorbing new information and experiences, but as you age, it becomes more selective. It decides what's important to keep and what's not. The brain doesn't store every detail, especially when the experience is familiar. A long commute to work, the routine of your morning coffee, the regularity of your evening walks. These things blend into the background of your life and fade from memory. The brain essentially says, we've seen this before. Let's not waste energy on remembering it. But it's not just the brain that changes as we age. The way we experience time shifts too. As a child, everything is new. The world is full of surprises, and your brain records each moment with the intensity of discovery. But as you grow older, you experience fewer firsts. First day at school, first kiss, first job. They all have a kind of magic, don't they? But as those milestones become fewer and farther between, time feels like it accelerates. It's as if, with each year, the memory of the first fades a little, and what remains are repetitions. The familiar, the known. This isn't just a feeling. It's supported by research. Studies show that as we age, our memories of events become less detailed. When we're young, we remember the color of the sky, the texture of the ground beneath our feet, the sounds around us. As we grow older, we retain less of the sensory experience. We're more likely to remember the broad strokes of the event, the people involved, the feelings we had, the general sense of what happened. The nuance fades, and time begins to feel like it's speeding up. The more we accumulate, the less we retain. But here's the catch. It's not just the volume of experiences that leads to this feeling of time speeding up. It's also the way we process them. As we grow older, we become more efficient at processing the world around us. We recognize patterns faster, and our brain doesn't have to work as hard to make sense of familiar experiences. This efficiency makes it easier for us to forget the details. You may not remember the exact location of every meeting you've attended over the past 5 years, but you remember the general pattern. You've lived through it enough times that your brain doesn't need to store every single instance. There's an eerie beauty to this idea. The older we get, the fewer firsts we experience, and the more our lives become shaped by familiar rhythms and routines. Time may feel like it's speeding up because our brain has learned to bypass the details, treating the repeated patterns of life as background noise, something that doesn't need to be recorded again. And yet, in this very process of forgetting, there's a certain freedom. We forget the small things, the things that no longer matter in the grand scheme of things, to make room for the big moments. But the paradox is clear. While time seems to speed up, so does our desire to hold onto the memories that matter most. As we age, the things we've learned and lived through begin to shape the way we remember. The big, important events take on more weight. We cherish them in ways we didn't before. The loss of a loved one, the birth of a child, the milestones that once seemed to happen on their own, they begin to crystallize in our minds with a new kind of clarity. The brain, which once discarded the routine, now holds onto the significant, the meaningful. This effect is especially apparent when we look at the memories we choose to preserve. As we age, we tend to remember things with more emotional intensity. Those intense moments, those emotional flashbulb memories, often become anchors in our personal timeline. We remember the first time we fell in love or the first time we experienced a deep loss. These moments stand still, frozen in time, while everything else seems to swirl around them, speeding by. Memory, then, is more than just a passive recording device. It's a reflection of our relationship with time itself. Our memories aren't just shaped by events. They're shaped by how we relate to them. The more important an event is to us, the more space it occupies in our minds. It becomes less about the specific details and more about the feeling it evokes. The meaning of that moment, the way it shifted our perspective, that's what we carry with us. This is why you might recall the warmth of a summer evening you spent with friends decades ago, or the exact way a particular song made you feel during a pivotal moment of your life. It's not because the details are crystal clear, but because the emotional imprint of that time is still strong. The memories that stay with us are not the ones that happened most recently, but the ones that have shaped us the most. There's also something comforting about this phenomenon. Time may seem to fly by faster the older we get, but the memories that matter most, the ones that shape who we are, remain anchored in our minds, holding us steady as the years slip by. In a world that moves faster and faster, those moments of deep, emotional significance serve as touchstones, reminders of who we are and where we've been. So, the next time you find yourself saying, "Where did the time go?" remember that it's not just the passage of time that's speeding up. It's the way your brain processes it, storing only the moments that carry the most meaning, allowing the rest to fade. Memory, after all, doesn't just hold the past. It curates it, shaping the story of who you are. And maybe, in some ways, that's the most powerful thing memory can do. Give us a sense of continuity, even as time moves faster than we can track. If memory shapes your sense of self, it also shapes something bigger that you live inside every day, your culture. You don't just carry your own past. You're swimming in everyone else's too. Your families, your communities, your countries, your species. You're wrapped in memories you didn't personally live, but still somehow belong to you. Up to now, we've been wandering mostly through your private inner archive. But you don't exist alone in time. You're surrounded by people whose memories brush up against yours, overlap with them, argue with them, and sometimes even replace them. That overlap is where something called collective memory begins. The stories a group tells itself about who they are, where they came from, and what matters. Think about your family for a moment. Every family has its greatest hits stories, the ones that get dragged out at holidays or reunions. The funny disaster vacation, the wedding where something went wildly wrong, the time someone said something so ridiculous it became legend. Maybe you've heard those stories so many times, you can recite them yourself, even if you were too young to remember or weren't even born yet. In those moments, something quiet and powerful is happening. You're being handed memories you didn't personally form. They're being offered to you like heirlooms. This is part of our story. Carry it. Over time, you start to feel like you were there, even if you weren't. Your mental past includes scenes that technically never belonged to your senses, but emotionally, they're yours. Zoom out from the family table, and it's the same thing, just bigger. Communities, nations, religions, they all rely on shared memory. Historical events, legends, holidays, tragedies, victories. Most people did not live through the founding moments of their culture, but they talk about them, reenact them, build rituals around them as if some part of their identity reaches backward to claim them. You see this in simple rituals like holiday meals that always feature that one recipe. You see in the way certain dates on the calendar carry a certain weight, even if you weren't alive when the event first happened. You see in monuments, in street names, in flags, in anthems. They're all memory devices built outside the brain to help keep a story alive. Before there were books, cameras, or hard drives, people used their minds as the only storage space available. Whole cultures survived on memory alone. Imagine living in a world where if the story isn't remembered, it's gone for good. No backup, no archive, no cloud. Just human minds passing things on, person to person, generation to generation. In many indigenous traditions, this wasn't just practical, it was sacred. Knowledge lived in song, in dance, in story. In some Aboriginal Australian cultures, for example, memory wasn't only spoken, it was walked. Sacred routes across the land, sometimes called song lines, carried stories of creation, ancestors, and survival. As you traveled, you weren't just moving through space, you were moving through a living archive. Each landmark sang a verse of the story. The memory was in the land, and the land was in the memory. In parts of West Africa, griots, storytellers, musicians, historians, served as living libraries. They carried genealogies, battles, treaties, myths in their minds. They weren't just entertainers, they were keepers of identity. Without them, entire histories could slip away. Imagine the pressure of that. Imagine the honor. And then there's the way cultures remember their dead. Memory doesn't stop at the edge of a lifetime. In some places, remembrance is quiet and solemn. Stone markers, moments of silence, flowers laid down gently. In others, it's loud, colorful, joyful. Think about celebrations where families gather to honor ancestors with favorite foods, music, stories, photos. It's not about saying goodbye again. It's about saying, you're still part of this. We remember you. In those rituals, memory becomes a bridge between the living and the dead. You may never have met your great-grandparents, but the stories told about them, how they laughed, what they endured, what they loved, can shape the way you see yourself. You inherit a past you didn't live. Religion, too, is deeply woven with memory. Many religious traditions are built on repeated acts of remembering. A meal reenacted, a story retold, a phrase repeated weekly, daily, yearly. Remember this, the ritual says, remember who you are, remember what we stand for. In some traditions, remembering is almost a moral duty. Forgetting certain stories isn't just sad, it's dangerous. It risks losing the lessons, the warnings, the wisdom those stories are meant to carry. On the flip side, sometimes cultures choose to forget, or try to. There are events people don't want to talk about, eras they skip over in the history books, wounds they'd rather pretend never happened. But unremembered doesn't mean unimportant. When painful collective memories are buried instead of faced, they usually leak out somewhere else. Intention, mistrust, inequality, shame passed down like an invisible heirloom. You might even feel this in your own family. The subject no one talks about. The person everyone avoids mentioning. The vague something happened that hovers in the air. That silence is its own kind of memory. It says, there's a story here, but we're not ready to tell it. The weight is still there, even if the details aren't. And then there are cultures that lean into the fleeting nature of life and memory. In Japan, there's the idea of appreciating things precisely because they won't last. The fall of cherry blossoms, a brief season of beauty that's precious because it's temporary. That awareness itself becomes a kind of memory in progress. You savor the moment more deeply as it's happening, already halfway in love with how you'll remember it later. The way a culture remembers shapes how its people feel time. In some places, the past looms large. In others, people focus more on the future or on cycles rather than straight lines. Even the language you speak can affect how you mentally place events, whether you lean on calendars and dates, or stories and relationships, or places and seasons. Language is full of memory metaphors, too. You keep someone's memory alive. You hold on to the past, let go of it, honor it, rewrite it. You can think of memory as a container, a path, a flame, a burden. Each metaphor carries its own attitude toward remembering. Is it sacred? Heavy? Optional? All of that seeps into how you personally relate to your own memories. And then there's the role of art. Think about how many books, songs, movies are basically memory made visible. Someone's childhood turned into a novel. A heartbreak turned into an album. A war turned into a film. Artists take their memories, and sometimes the memories of their culture, and shape them into something that can be shared, replayed, re-experienced by millions of people who were never there. You put on headphones or sit in a cinema, and suddenly you're walking around inside someone else's remembered world. Even comedy is a form of collective remembering. Remember that time is the start of so many jokes, so many friendships. Inside jokes between friends are literally little memory knots tying you together. You share not just laughter, but the knowledge of why that thing is funny. If someone new joins the group, you explain the backstory, and in that moment, you invite them into the memory too. And now, in your lifetime, collective memory has a whole new layer, the digital one. Photos, videos, messages, posts. Your phone probably holds more images than entire generations ever saw of themselves. Events that would once have lived only in people's minds are now recorded from 6 different angles and uploaded before the moment is even over. Birthdays, protests, parties, quiet walk at sunset moments, captured, captioned, archived. That's its own kind of cultural shift. On one hand, it feels like we're remembering more. On the other, it can make our own internal memories lazy. I don't have to remember this, your brain whispers. The photo's got it, but the photo can only hold what it sees. It can't hold how you felt, what something meant, the way your heart changed a little that day. Old cultures use stories, songs, and rituals as memory devices. You use cloud storage and timelines. Different tools, same urge. Don't let what matters disappear. Of course, collective memory isn't always gentle. It can be weaponized, used to divide, to blame, to keep old wounds bleeding. We remember what they did can be a call for justice or a way to keep hatred alive. That's the double edge of shared memory. It can help you not repeat mistakes, or it can lock you into repeating them forever. And yet, even with those risks, humans keep telling stories. Around tables, on stages, through screens, in whispers, in songs hummed to sleepy children. You came from a line of people who, long before any of this technology existed, kept memory going just by speaking it aloud and listening. You're part of that chain, whether you notice it or not. You tell stories about your day. You pass down family legends. You repost things that hit you in a particular way, adding, "This is exactly how it feels." Piece by piece, you help build the shared memory of the time you're living in right now. And just like your personal memories, the ones you share with others aren't perfectly accurate. They bend, they change the retelling. But accuracy isn't always what gives them power. It's the meaning, the connection, the sense that through memory, yours, mine, everyone's, we're all weaving ourselves into something bigger than a single lifetime. You're not just remembering your life. You're helping remember our life. The life of your people, your place, your era on this spinning planet. And even if no one ever writes it all down, even if most of it fades, some of it will remain. In words, in songs, in the land, in someone else's heart. You've learned by now that memory is fluid, changing, malleable, and influenced by many factors, including emotion, repetition, and time. But as malleable as it is, it's also fragile. Despite its ability to shape and reshape who we are, memory can break down, shatter, and slip away entirely. It's an unsettling thought, isn't it? The idea that the very thing that holds our identity, the thing that makes us us, could be as fragile as glass, ready to crack at any moment. We see this fragility in a very real way when memory begins to slip from us, whether because of aging, trauma, or disease. Perhaps you've known someone with dementia or Alzheimer's disease, or you've seen the toll it takes in films or news stories. It's heartbreaking to witness. One day, a person you love recognizes you, remembers who they are, and holds onto the threads of their past. The next, they look at you blankly, struggling to recall your name or the moments you shared. It's a gradual process. At first, it's just small lapses. They forget where they left their keys or where they put their glasses. They forget to call someone back, or they misplace an appointment. But over time, it gets worse. Memories that once seemed permanent begin to unravel. This isn't just a loss of facts. It's a loss of self. The person you loved and knew no longer feels like themselves. The connection you once shared starts to feel frayed. And yet, despite this gradual erasure of memory, the essence of who they are, their spirit, their emotions, the depth of their character, often remains. They may forget the details, but the core of who they are can sometimes shine through in a moment of recognition, a familiar gesture, a smile. It's as if memory isn't entirely the anchor to identity after all. There's something deeper that remains when all else fades. This fragility of memory is also seen in the aftermath of trauma. In moments of extreme distress, when the brain feels like it's under siege, the memory system can go into overdrive, recording everything with intense emotional charge. That's why you can recall the details of a traumatic event in such sharp focus. The sound of a car crash, the sight of a flashing light, the taste of salt in the air after a loss. But it's also why some trauma victims experience what's called memory fragmentation. The memory doesn't stay whole. It shatters into pieces, often out of order, disconnected, disjointed. A single event becomes a collection of jagged moments, and the story it tells is incomplete. In some ways, this fragmentation is protective. The mind is doing what it can to shield you from the full force of the pain, so it breaks the event into pieces that don't connect, that don't allow you to relive it all at once. But it also makes healing difficult. When the pieces don't fit together, it's hard to make sense of what happened. It's hard to process it, to understand it, and to move forward. It's as though the story is permanently unfinished, with some chapters lost entirely, leaving gaps where meaning should be. And then there's the more common, subtle kind of memory loss we all experience in our daily lives. It's not the sudden shattering of identity that happens with dementia, nor is it the jagged, painful aftermath of trauma. It's the everyday forgetting that is, for the most part, harmless. You can't remember the name of the song you were humming 5 minutes ago. You forget the exact details of a conversation you had with a friend earlier that day. Your mind runs through its usual shuffle of memories, but the connection isn't always solid. This kind of forgetfulness is universal, and while it might seem trivial, it hints at something important about how memory works. Memory is not a perfect system. In fact, it's often unreliable. But we don't think about memory as unreliable, do we? We rely on it constantly. It's our personal history, the lens through which we understand the world and our place in it. Yet memory doesn't work like a perfect video recorder. It doesn't capture every detail, every nuance. Instead, it records what's deemed important, what's repeated, and what aligns with the story we're telling ourselves. Everything else fades into the background. Think about a conversation you had recently. Can you remember every word spoken? Probably not, but you can remember the essence of it, the emotions, the feelings it evoked. Memory prioritizes the emotional resonance over the specific details. This is why memories often feel so vivid and so real. They capture how something felt rather than what was actually said or done. And this is also why we're so prone to misremembering, to filling in the blanks, to distorting the story over time. The emotions surrounding a memory remain, but the factual details can be hazy, foggy, blurry. It's in these gaps, in these blanks, that memory becomes vulnerable. When you don't have a clear record of an event, your mind tries to fill it in. It takes what it knows, what it's heard, what it's experienced, and reconfigures the story. Sometimes that reconfiguration is harmless, creating a more coherent narrative. Other times, it leads to inaccuracies, distortions, or even complete fabrications. But here's the twist. Sometimes this isn't a flaw. Sometimes it's a feature. Memory is, after all, a tool for survival. Its goal isn't accuracy, per se. It's meaning. Its purpose. If memory only retained the facts, it would be a dull, static record. But memory, as imperfect and malleable as it is, has a deeper function. It helps us make sense of the past, shape our understanding of the present, and guide us toward the future. This is why, for better or worse, memory isn't always the truth. It's our truth. It's the emotional narrative we weave from the raw materials of our past experiences. And that's where the fragility comes in, because memory isn't just about what happened. It's about what we think happened, what we want to believe, what we've chosen to remember. It's a reflection of who we are now, more than who we were then. But what happens when memory is lost completely? What happens when a connection to the past is severed? When all the layers of identity, built upon moments lived and memories formed, begin to peel away? That's a question with a profound answer. To lose memory is not just to lose information. It's to lose the thread that connects the person you are to the person you once were. It's like having the map of your life and suddenly losing the key that shows you how to read it. Yet, even when memory falters, there's something remarkable about the human spirit. Because while the brain may forget, the essence of who we are still exists. We may forget names, faces, dates, but somewhere deep inside, a memory of love, of connection, of self persists. And maybe that's the most beautiful, fragile thing about memory, that even in the face of its own collapse, there's still something there, something that connects us to the people we've been and the people we will be. So here you are, sitting with the knowledge that memory is powerful and fragile, shaping everything from your identity to your culture, and yet always slightly unreliable. And being human, of course, the next question is, what if we could control it? Because we don't just live in a world of stories and candles and song lines anymore. You're also living in an age of brain scans, neural networks, and labs quietly asking questions that a few decades ago would have sounded like the opening monologue of a sci-fi movie. Questions like, can we fix broken memory? Can we enhance it? Can we edit it? And behind those questions, a softer one. Should we? Right now, scientists are already experimenting with ways to nudge memory from the outside. Not with magic wands or glowing crystals, but with electricity, chemistry, and light. There are studies where tiny electrodes are placed in the brain, in regions like the hippocampus, to try to boost the signals involved in forming new memories. It's like giving the air traffic controller of your memory a louder microphone, hoping the planes land more smoothly. There are experiments with light. Yes, light, where specific neurons in animals are turned on or off using tiny flashes, bringing certain memories into focus or dimming them. In mice, researchers have been able to activate the memory of a fear and then blunt its emotional sting by changing what happens while that memory is active. It sounds like something out of a dystopian novel, but the motivation behind it is often incredibly compassionate, helping people whose memories are hurting them, who are trapped in loops of trauma. You can imagine where this goes. If we can identify the networks that hold a memory, if we can strengthen or weaken them, in theory, we could one day help someone with Alzheimer's retrieve lost pieces of their life, or help someone with PTSD loosen the grip of a horrifying moment. Not erase the past, but loosen its hold. Take some of the sharpness out of the edges. It's hopeful. It's also a little scary, because once you realize that memory is a physical process, electrical pulses, chemical changes, proteins being synthesized, it's not a huge leap to imagine it being engineered. Memory implants, devices that help you store more, recall faster, or perhaps even give you access to experiences you never lived. You can almost hear the ad. Never forget anything again. Sounds convenient until you remember that forgetting is part of your sanity. Imagine what it would be like if every awkward moment, every careless insult, every heartbreak were as vivid today as the day it happened. No softening with time, no blurring around the edges. Just perfect recall for everything. At first, that might sound like a superpower, but think back to what we talked about earlier. The blessing of letting certain memories fade, the grace of not being haunted by every misstep. To remember everything might mean never really healing. Still, the fantasy is tempting. Download a language, upload a skill. Wake up one morning and remember how to play the piano like a master, or speak flawless Mandarin, or recall every page of every book you've ever read. You could become, in theory, a walking encyclopedia, your mind augmented by circuits and code. But if your memories are partly what make you you, then what happens when those memories come from somewhere else? If someone installs a memory of climbing a mountain into your head, complete with the feeling of the wind, the burn in your legs, the view from the top, did you really climb it? If you feel the emotions, if your brain treats it as real, does the distinction even matter anymore? Stories have played with this idea for years. Characters who discover their past is fabricated, who realize their childhood memories are implants, scripts written by someone else. The horror doesn't come just from being deceived. It comes from the question, if my memories aren't real, then who am I? Now imagine that kind of technology, not just in fiction, but in some future lab, quietly making its way into the world. Therapy might use it to help people reframe trauma. Advertisers might dream about using it to cement brand loyalty. Governments, well, you can fill in that blank. And then there's déjà vu, that weird little glitch you've probably felt before. Walking into a room you've never seen and thinking, I've been here. The brain's current best guess is that it's a timing error, a bit of neural lag that makes new information feel like an old memory. But even knowing that, the feeling of déjà vu is oddly haunting, like a tiny hint that time isn't as clean and linear as it looks. Some people like to imagine that déjà vu is a bleed-through from another version of you, in another possible timeline, living a slightly different life. Not science, but it's a poetic way of thinking about it, isn't it? As if memory, instead of just reaching back into your own past, might reach sideways, brushing against realities you'll never fully touch. Whether or not that's true, we already know that the brain uses the same machinery to remember the past and imagine the future. When you recall a moment, certain regions light up. When you imagine a moment that hasn't happened yet, many of those same regions fire. To your brain, remembering and imagining are close cousins. This means a strange thing. In a way, you're already remembering the future each time you vividly picture it. You're building a possible memory before it exists. Now, layer technology on top of that. Virtual reality already allows people to step into simulated worlds, to experience things their bodies have never really done. AI can generate scenes, voices, even entire conversations that feel eerily real. If you spend hours in spaces like that, seeing, hearing, feeling, those experiences will be written into your brain as memories. Not imaginary, but neurologically real. The brain doesn't stamp them fiction just because the pixels came from a server instead of sunlight. In that world, the line between things that actually happened in physical reality and things I experienced vividly in a constructed reality gets blurrier. You might one day look back and say, did I travel to that city, or did I just spend a lot of time in that hyper-real simulation? The emotional imprint might be similar. The brain cares less about passports than about patterns. And then comes the wildest question: what if we could share memories directly? Not stories about what happened, but the raw sensory, emotional experience itself. Instead of telling someone, the sunset was beautiful, the air was cold, I felt small but peaceful, you just send it. They close their eyes and feel your moment with your perspective, as if it's happening inside their own mind. Would that make us more empathetic? If you could fully feel what it was like to live a day in someone else's life, carry their fears, their joys, their background hum of worry or hope, how much harder would it be to hate them? To dismiss them? You wouldn't be guessing. You'd know in your bones what their memories feel like. Or would it be overwhelming? Would boundaries start to crack if we carried not only our own past, but fragments of countless others? Would we lose something intimate and sacred about our private inner world? We already share memory in simpler ways. Through movies, books, songs, we step into curated slices of other people's experiences. But those are interpretations, not direct uploads. They're filtered through art, through language. They leave room for you to meet the memory halfway, to imagine parts of it yourself. Direct transfer would be something else entirely. Brutally honest. No adjusting the lighting, no retakes. It's the kind of future that sits on the edge between utopia and nightmare. Like so many powerful tools, it would depend entirely on how it's used and by whom. For healing? For control? For connection? For profit? And underneath all of that, there's still something beautifully simple. Your unaugmented, imperfect human memory. No implants. No edits by strangers. Just you, your brain, your history, doing the best it can with what it has. It forgets names. It misplaces keys. It confuses dates and mixes up details. But it also quietly keeps the taste of a favorite meal, the sound of a loved one's voice, the warmth of a hand you held. Even as technology advances, that basic human experience of remembering and forgetting will still be there. You might one day have devices that help you recall, apps that chronicle your life, tools that shore up what time tries to erode. But the part of memory that lives in your chest, the quiet ache when a song reminds you of someone, the sudden softness when you catch a familiar scent, that won't be written in code. In the end, no matter how much we tinker with it, memory will probably remain what it has always been. Part archive, part storyteller, part guardian, part trickster. Science may help us repair it, soften it, maybe even enhance it. Technology may give us external backups and shared experiences. But the mystery at the center, that strange, wonderful feeling of suddenly being transported to another time by a word, a smell, a shadow of a thought, that will still be there. And as you think about the future of remembering, there's something grounding in that. Beneath the circuits and the speculation, there is still this basic human act, closing your eyes, feeling a moment rise up from somewhere deep inside, and quietly saying to yourself, "Oh, I remember." As we near the end of this journey through the landscape of memory, we arrive at an inescapable truth. Memory is more than just a tool for recalling the past. It is the thread that weaves together the very fabric of who we are. Memory is our constant companion, shaping our identities and guiding us through life. It defines us, and yet it is fragile, shifting and changing with time, emotion, and experience. Think about it for a moment. Without memory, you wouldn't recognize yourself. You wouldn't know who you were, who you are, or who you will become. Memory holds the story of your life. The good, the bad, the mundane, the extraordinary. It preserves the laughter shared with friends, the heartbreaks that taught you to be stronger, the milestones that marked your growth. It's the map you carry inside, guiding you, reminding you of the paths you've walked and the lessons you've learned. And yet, as much as memory shapes us, it is also vulnerable. It can fade. It can distort. Over time, the details of a memory blur, the sharp edges soften, and the once vivid images can dissolve into the mist of the past. Some memories, those deeply etched into your heart, stay with you forever. Others, even the ones you thought you'd never forget, slip quietly away, leaving only a faint echo of what once was. This fragility is part of the beauty of memory. It's what makes it human. Memory is not a perfect recording. It is a fluid, living thing. It's not about holding on to every detail. It's about carrying forward the feelings, the significance, the meaning. Memory isn't meant to preserve facts. It's meant to preserve the essence of your experience. In a world where everything is in constant motion, memory is the still point. It's where you anchor yourself, where you return to when the world becomes overwhelming. It's what lets you understand your own journey, and it's what connects you to others. Memory is the language of the heart. When you share a memory with someone, whether it's through a conversation or a story passed down through generations, you are sharing a piece of yourself. You're giving something that belongs to you, allowing it to live on in someone else's mind, someone else's heart. But memory is not just a personal experience. It is collective, too. You carry not only your own memories, but also those of your family, your community, your culture. The stories that have been passed down, the lessons learned by those who came before you, the history that defines your people. All of these are embedded in your memory, shaping the way you see the world and your place in it. This shared memory is what binds us together. It's what creates a sense of belonging. It's why you can sing the same song as someone you've never met and feel an instant connection. It's why you can hear a story, and even if it's not your own, it resonates with you. It becomes a part of your own personal narrative. Memory is not just about the past. It's a bridge that connects us to one another, to the generations before us, and to those who will come after. But there's another side to memory, one that often goes unnoticed, the side of forgetting. We often think of forgetting as a loss, but it's really a gift. Without forgetting, we would be overwhelmed by every little detail of life. We'd carry the weight of every experience, every moment, and we wouldn't have the space to move forward, to grow. Forgetting allows us to make room for the new, for the experiences yet to come. It's the brain's way of prioritizing, of keeping what matters and letting go of the rest. Forgetting isn't a failure. It's a natural part of how memory works. It's how the brain clears the clutter, how it ensures that the most important memories stay with us, while the less significant ones fade into the background. And sometimes, the act of forgetting can be a form of healing. We forget the pain of old wounds, the sting of past mistakes, and we make space for new joys, new triumphs. Forgetting allows us to move on, to start fresh, to live fully in the present without being weighed down by the past. But here's the paradox. Even as memories fade, they never truly disappear. They leave their mark on you, whether you consciously recall them or not. The feelings they evoked, the lessons they taught you, the way they shaped your view of the world, they stay buried deep within you, ready to resurface when the time is right. And even when a memory is gone, it still lives on in the choices you make, in the way you love, in the way you face challenges. The impact of memory is not determined by how clearly you can recall it, but by how it has shaped the person you've become. That's the legacy of memory. It's not about remembering every little thing. It's about carrying forward the meaning, the essence of your experiences. Memory is not just a record of the past. It's the foundation of the present. It's how you understand who you are, where you've been, and where you're going. And so, as you lie here tonight, drifting off to sleep, think about the memories that have shaped you. Not just the big moments, the milestones, but the quiet ones too. The moments that have quietly built the person you are. The way you smile when you see a familiar face. The way you feel when you hear a song that takes you back to a moment in time. The way you find comfort in the smell of a place you've been before. Those small memories, they're the ones that matter most. They're the ones that live with you, day after day, weaving a tapestry of who you are. Memory doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be a flawless, unchanging record. What matters is that it's yours. What matters is that it shapes you, that it gives you a sense of continuity, a sense of self. And even as memories fade, as time moves on and new experiences are added, those memories will still be with you, quietly influencing the way you live, the way you love, and the way you move forward. So as you close your eyes tonight, let the memories that matter to you come gently to the surface. Let them fill your heart, fill your mind, and let them remind you of the beauty of your journey, of all that you've lived, and all that you will continue to become. Thank you for being here with me tonight, for taking this journey through memory and all that it means. Remember, you are not the sum of your past. You are the sum of all the ways your memories continue to shape you. And in the end, that is enough.